In this video, I'm going to be sharing 2 ways of how to make a face mask at home using cotton and elastic bands. Quick disclaimer, these fabrics are not clinically approved for the use of protective tools. I have linked down below an article that actually suggests the right fabrics to get. The aim of this video is to share the making techniques, so if you have the time and the resources, you can make some for yourself or donate to your local health center during these trying times. So I'm going to be working with the following materials. I have my measuring tape, a fabric scissors, some pins. I have this leftover Ankara fabric as well as a plain white cotton. They are both woven and relatively on the thinner side. I also have my pattern master here to help me create the patterns for the mask. I have simple A4 paper because that will be enough for the size of the patterns. I also have my paper, scissors, marker, pen, as well as this elastic band that is roughly 1 centimeter wide. I also got myself this wire that I'll be using for the top end of the mask to help you shape it around your nose. Everything is going to be linked down below for anyone who actually wants to get the supplies. So we're going to be starting with the first mask, which looks like this, and I'm going to be making the pattern first. I'm starting off by drawing a vertical line like so, and then from this vertical line we're going to be marking across 5 inches or 13 centimeters. We're going to connect these dashed lines together so we have 2 vertical lines to work with. Next up, I'm going to be marking 6.5 or 16.5 inches along the vertical line. It can be either one, but the aim is that you square that point across so you have a rectangular shape that looks like this. So I'm going to be marking 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters on both sides. You can start from the top or from the bottom. It honestly doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to be connecting those 2 points together. Now turning the paper around so you can clearly see what I'm about to do. I'm going to be drawing in the shape of the mask. So the wider side is going to be the bottom area of the mask and the slimmer side is going to be the top. So I've marked 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters on the top and 1.5 inches or 4 cm along the bottom. We're going to be connecting these points together to create the rounded side or the center front edge of the mask. So now that we have this shape in place, I'm going to be marking 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters down the vertical line like so, connected to that top end of the mask pattern, and then from the bottom I'm going to be marking 1.25 inches or 3 cm up, connected to the bottom end of the mask. It just helps to shape it better and lets it sit easier on your face. So with that done, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around and a 2 centimeter sort of side allowance, which will help you make the tunnels that your elastic will pass through. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece out so we have our pattern ready to cut onto fabric. And don't forget to double check your measurements. I suggest if you're making this for yourself, work with your own measurements to get the best outcome. So I'm going to cut this on fabric. I ended up cutting 2 pairs because I wanted to make it like a nice finished edge on the top and the bottom. Next up, I'm going to be joining up that center front seams for both pairs. I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, working my way from the top all the way to the bottom, not forgetting to do my back stitch at the beginning at the end. So once I have both layers done, so one is the outer one and one is the lining, we're going to be putting right sides together and I'm going to be joining the top and the bottom edge. I always like to add pins first before sewing because it just means that nothing moves while I transition to my sewing machine. So I'm going to be sewing the top and the bottom edge on a 1 centimeter seam allowance to help me finish the top and the bottom edge of the mask nicely. So I'm just sewing on a regular straight stitch using normal tension, making my way till the end. Repeat this for the top and for the bottom. Now I've cut myself a wire that is 5 inches or 13 centimeters long. I've used some clear sellotape to sort of cover the ends so it doesn't poke through the fabric. And I'm going to be marking sort of the width of that wire along the seam allowance because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a mini channel inside the seam allowance here. So I'm marking 2.5 inches along the left and right hand side from that seam edge or center front, and we're going to be starting from one end, closing off the tunnel, sewing through the seam allowance and leaving the other end open so it allows you to pass the wire through. So the stitch is about 0.3 to 0.4 centimeters wide. It's a really narrow stitch because the wire is on the slimmer side, and once you make your way to the other end, just leave it open so you are able to pass the wire through the open end like so, taking your time to go through that tunnel until you make your way to the other end. So once you've completely passed the wire through, you can go back to your sewing machine and close off that open end of the tunnel. I have cut myself 2 elastic bands that measure 10 inches or 25 centimeters long, and this is what we're going to be passing through the side tunnels of the mask. So I have pinned the excess of the mask to the side. I don't know if you can hear me, but I've pinned about 1 inch in on both sides, so that's about how much. That's about how much I have gotten rid of through that pleat on the side. I find doing this against the face gives you the best result, but if you are making for others, I say 1 inch to half an inch is like a safe amount to make that pleat. But now I'm going to stitch this particular point in place and then fold it back in and fix the elastic through. So I'm going in to stitch that pleat down along the side edge so it doesn't unravel with time. I'm going to do this for the left and the right hand side before going back in and folding and sewing that edge. You can do a mini fold along the raw edge and then another 1 cm fold again, as long as you have your tunnel ready for your elastic to be passed through. So I'm just using a safety pin to pass the elastic through the tunnel like so it makes its way from one end to the other side, and then I'm going to be joining both ends of the elastic using a zigzag stitch. This is going to hopefully prevent the elastic from snapping when you start to wear the mask over time. So I just did this 3-4 times just to ensure that it is safe and secure. So I'm just going in here to try it on to see how it sits on my face. It hugs really nicely around the nose and around the neck because of how we shaped it. And that wire on top really helps to lock the mask down around the nose. So I recommend if the elastic is too sort of loose, you can go back in and make it tighter by cutting off some inches from the ends and re-sewing it up. So with that, the first mask is done. We're going to work on the second one, which is this design. So these are the pattern dimensions on the left hand of the screen. I just did this prior to recording because it's a simple squarish shape that measures 7 by 8 inches. So just take note of these measurements if you want to create this style. So once you have your pattern ready, I'm going to go ahead and cut this onto fabric. You will need to cut 2. I just find that cutting 2 made a lot of sense. After cutting the both layers like so, don't forget to cut your notches along the side because those notches will help you to make the pleats that this style of mask typically has. Usually has around 3 pleats. So once that is all taken care of, I'm going to join the top and the bottom end by 1 centimeter, fold it inside out and give it a nice press, and this is what it should look like. I'm also going to go ahead and mark where the wire sort of sits along one side on the top, and we're going to be stitching and creating a tunnel like we did for the first one. So starting from one end, which you close off, you leave your needle in, lift that footer and make your way towards the other side of the tunnel, remembering to leave it open, and the width of this tunnel is about 0.5 centimeter. So I'm going to pass the wire through like so, and once it's made its way all the way to the other side, I'm going to take this back to the machine. We're going to be closing off that tunnel to secure the wire inside. Once you're happy with that stitch and how the wire sits in that seam, I'm going to go ahead and make the pleats with the help of those side notches that we made. I'm just pleating it upwards like so. So the top side of this mask is where the wire sits, and you want your pleat to sort of go in that direction. So I'm doing one side first using pins to hold the pleats in place, and then I'm going to pleat the other side and try to make them match so they look nice and uniform from the left to the right hand side. Once all of those pleats are done nicely and secured with pins, you can go back and stitch that on the sewing machine just to keep them locked and in place. So I'm just doing a 1 centimeter stitch securing all of my pleats along the side like so. You can use a loose stitch if you want, because that's just to keep the pleats in place. I'm going to go back in and fold that edge twice, hold that fold down with some pins, and then we're going to be finishing off the edges or the sides which we're folding here by stitching them on the machine. So I'm going to take this in my machine and I'm going to be sewing using inner straight stitch from the beginning all the way till the end, remembering to do my back stitch where necessary to ensure my seam doesn't unravel with time. So once I've done this for the left and for the right hand side, I've gone ahead to cut 2 elastics that are 8 inches or about 20 centimeter long, and we're going to be joining this to the side of the mask like so. So I'm going to do this for the left and for the right hand side to finish off this style of face mask. So this is the finished mask all done. Like I said earlier on, these fabrics are not protective fabrics, so please, if you want to make one for yourself or for your loved ones or to donate to the hospitals, try and get fabrics that actually have some level of filtration, water resistance, or something that will be protective on some level. That's just sort of my opinion, but this is what the mask looks like on. Sits really nicely and a lot tighter compared to the first one. So these are both masks all done. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share with your community so they can recreate it for themselves or for their loved ones. Until my next video, please stay safe, stay positive, and be kind to one another. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.